Hello ladies and gentlemen, WillE here. A lot of people
love
the Wrath of the Lich King. In fact, it's looked back upon now as the absolute peak of World of Warcraft, and factually, at least subscriber-wise from the information Blizzard gave us, it was. For myself, however, I'm often asked what was my favourite expansion or favourite period in World of Warcraft's history.
Burning Crusade.
I don't think there's any entire expansion which stands clearly head and shoulders above the rest. In fact, I struggle to say that I like one in its entirety from start to finish. For example, in Wrath, I can already tell you when it happens in our classic timeline that revamped Naxxramas 25 and 10 man is going to be a bit of a shocker. The value in it back in the day was because barely anybody saw the place fully through in actual vanilla. Nowadays, quite a significant...
Well, I think a lot of people, it was a shocker for even 40 Nax, because people went into 40 Nax and they thought it was going to be like this massive, huge, super hard thing. And yeah, there were some guilds that struggled on it, but overall, it really wasn't as hard as it used to be.
Portion of the population did, to some extent at least. So
when
we go back in there and it's been greatly nerfed, we're going to be left with Sartharian's Lair and the Eye of Eternity, which are quite similar to Gruul and Mag in two pretty fast to wrap up raids, if not too much difficulty there. And then we have Trial of the Crusader, of course, which is when Blizzard made the most optimal way to play your character to complete the raid on 4 separate difficulties each week. So unless they change things there, we have that to look forward to. If I were to try and pick some of my favorite times from World of Warcraft, the first tier of Cataclysm and the heroic dungeons then were absolutely incredible. I loved the Nighthold and the Suramar story, progressing through all of that. And I even liked Siege of Orgrimmar, the Timeless Isle release initially when I was playing my Resto Druid then. Well, I liked it before it went on for over a year, that is.
I'm going to give my thoughts on this before the video comes out. I want to go ahead and explain. Like, I think Wrath of the Lich King in like a vacuum was pretty good. But overall, I think Wrath of the Lich King set the stage for so many things that made the game worse. Like, just over time, Wrath made the game way, way worse.
King, the final in the big 3 of the classic expansions, the peak of World of Warcraft subcount as it gradually rose over the 10 million mark, and as we make our way through our classic timeline, it is to this day one of the most fondly looked back upon times in WoW's history.
Was great.
A perfect storm of different themes within the game coming together, following up the end of the Warcraft 3 story for the RTS fans.
I think also another reason why people like Wrath is like Wrath was probably the first time that a lot of people really got the opportunity to really be good at the game. Because, like, Wrath was whenever a lot of people who were young that started playing the game got old enough to, like, really fully process and understand how to fucking play it the right way. And they got enough free time to be able to raid and take it seriously. So, like, Wrath had, like, all of these, like, external reasons of why it was a good expansion. Which I don't know. As I said, like, Wrath of the Lich King Classic WoW is just not, in my opinion... It's not going to be as good as it was. Like, I feel like Wrath is going to die in like a week and a half.
New hero class in the Death Knight, the first new addition
it'll die like
to the
way
game.
faster than TBC.
Evolutions of classes to make them much more well-rounded, new PvP content, and some of the most memorable raids, and some of the least, looking at you, Ruby Sanctum, World of Warcraft has ever seen.
Yeah.
But if you never played back then, as somebody who did myself, it was pretty good overall, I'd say.
The thing with Ruby Sanctum, though, Ruby Sanctum wasn't that bad because they put in Ruby Sanctum as just something else for players to do. Like, they basically just threw it in there randomly because the Cataclysm was taking so long. Because, like, Wrath of the Lich King was the first time that, because of all the catch-up mechanisms and everything that were in the game, there were so many people who were sitting and farming ICC all day, and they were just bored of it. And Blizzard had never really had that happen before. Because in Burning Crusade, most of the people that had quit the game had quit because they just got bored of the game, they didn't like the game, not because they ran out of raiding content or content to progress their character with. Because you had to do, like, you know, like Karazhan, Gruul, like SSC, TK, Black Temple, Sunwell, right? And you had a lot of things you had to do. But in Wrath of the Lich King, all you really had to do at the end of it was level up, do some dungeons, do TOC a few times, and you get right into ICC. It was super fucking fast. And because of that, people hit that wall so fast and they got bored of it.
A lot of things right that the player base really responded well to. It's no surprise that it was the peak. It also did a lot of things which are now very much looked down upon, which seemingly are often very casually looked over, so not to tarnish the perfect memory.
Exactly.
The rose tint is in real effect here. You've seen how people have approached the raiding in Classic, right? And in TBC so far. And I was a little curious as to how the raid content would shape up having never raided in actual vanilla or the majority of TBC, we always heard that the game was hard back then, and then we got to MC and it was beaten within the first week from level 1, and then you'd hear Veilstraz and Blackwing there, that was the next big wall, and it was beaten within all of 30 seconds, then wait for AQ, that fell over. Wait for Nax, it was beaten day 1 within 1 hour and 20 minutes, I believe. Maybe I'll do a video looking a bit more into this, but I did actually...
Yeah, I remember, like, this was one of the funniest things in Classic WoW, is watching the Classic Andes slowly have to walk back all of the positions that they had. They're like, oh, well, you know, Classic WoW, I mean, dude, you couldn't even get to 60 unless you were really good at the game. Like, only the most dedicated and strongest survive in Classic WoW, and then immediately everybody got 60. And then, Molten Core, that's whenever you really got tested, because you needed all this fire resist, and you had to, like, farm with your guild, and there was, like, this thing that you had to mind control in Blackrock Spire, then you had to put that on your tanks, and if you didn't do that, you just die because it did so much damage. And then, obviously, people just went in there and fucking destroyed it. And then, oh, well, yeah, of course they did. It was undertuned. But whenever BWL comes out, you'll see. Veil, guilds are going to wipe on Veil for months because they don't have the gear for it. And then people are just one-shotting Veil. And just killing Veil was one of the easiest bosses. People would use Veil for the buff. It wasn't even a boss. It was like, oh, this is the boss that we charge up our buff so we can clear the real boss, which is the trash packs after Veil. And then after that, they're like, oh, well, that was easy because, you know, it wasn't balanced the right way. They had too many debuffs on the boss. Whenever AQ comes out, it's going to be totally fucking different. You'll see. And then AQ comes out, people fucking destroy it. And Visitus was kind of hard because people didn't know how to use like the little venom sacs to cleanse themselves. And then they're like, see, I told you it's hard. You wiped once on it. I told you it's fucking hard. You wiped. And this is how they looked at it. And then finally, Naxxramas came out, and this was the one thing that everybody was like, all right. So Nax was like the fucking gold standard that everybody thought was this fucking impossible, like you could not beat this raid. And people went in and they were clearing it on the first week. Like all of these guilds were clearing it on the first week, and they're like, oh, well, Blizzard, listen, Blizzard is too easy, but it was way harder back then. They didn't tune it right. And there were all of these excuses every time. No, sorry, Asmon, you're really wrong here. I mean, the numbers agree with me. I'm sorry to say, but I believe that I have the numbers on my side.
Raid in Wrath of the Lich King, though, the whole way through. I never completed all the content on the hardest difficulty possible, but I felt as though I saw it, and how they actually roll out the raids is going to be really interesting to see as well, because something changed with the format of raiding in each separate tier of Wrath. In fact, thinking about it, I am looking forward to Wrath a bit less than I was initially, because I have raided fully through the entire expansion. But back on track, Wrath of the Lich King, for all the good that it did...
That's one of the things that I feel about Wrath, is like, I already beat Wrath of the Lich King. Like, I beat Heroic Lich King back in the day. The only thing I didn't do, I did on 10 man. I didn't do it on 25 man. That's just because we didn't have enough people. I beat like Yogg 0. I got Herald of the Titans. There's like a few little challenges that I'd want to do, like getting like Argent Defender, doing like Tribute of Immortality. That would be cool. But other than that, I mean, it's not really show achieve date. No, I got Yogg 0 during ICC. I didn't get it during Old War, but I did get it. I mean, still. And Death's Demise. It's just I don't know, man. I just like Wrath doesn't have like, I guess it's like I was most hyped for Classic WoW raiding because like I had never really done all of Classic WoW raiding. I had only done like some ZG and 20-man raids. And for Burning Crusade, I'm hyped up for Burning Crusade still. I like raiding in Burning Crusade way more than I did in Classic, 100%. However, I already did a lot of the Burning Crusade raids before. I'm looking at the Burning Crusade Classic, like this is my victory lap. This is what I'm doing. Like I'm going back into the I'm going back into high school and I'm just styling on all my old teachers. I'm walking in there wearing my hat sideways like they always used to tell me not to. And I'm sitting there listening to my music. I'm on my phone. And like, I'm going in there and I'm like, I own this place now. Like, this is, bro, I'm beyond this. That's the way I feel like going back and playing Burning Crusade Classic.
It brought in some real controversial stuff under the hood. We had dual spec, which is now being widely asked for actually in TBC to ease up access to get into heroics or to flip between PvP and PvE. Back in Wrath, it was added in the first major content patch, cost 1,000 gold, and you needed to be level 40. Different from how things are in TBC, where when you change spec, you need to change around your bars, your gear, your talents. In Wrath, you also had to change your glyphs. And glyphs were a pretty huge deal for your power level, different from retail today, where they've just turned into cosmetic things. And prior to dual spec, you had to carry around glyphs in your bag so that you could redo them whenever you needed to if you were trying to push the performance of your character.
I think that glyphs kind of sucked. I mean, I'm gonna be honest. I thought they kind of sucked. But like, I mean, they were cool in a way because they were ways that you could augment your spells. Like, they were cool in practice, but what it really came down to was you just had your 3 main glyphs that you use for raiding, and you just put those on, and that was it. I remember, like, there was one warrior in my guild. There was a heroic strike glyph that would, like, give you rage back whenever you did something with heroic strike. I forgot what it was. And as soon as I put that glyph on, I did, like, 500 more DPS. And I was like, okay, well, I'm not taking this off now. Okay, that was it.
She was introduced to allow players to teleport directly from anywhere in the world to a dungeon cross server. And it did get pretty toxic on release, since on one hand you were having the more casual player base who either didn't do dungeons or who put the word heroic up to a dungeon which was going to be really difficult, like it was in heroic raiding. And then you had the more hardcore scene of players who may be leveling an alt or re-rolling or just trying to get some badges for their daily, something like that.
The thing is also, like, the heroics in Wrath of the Lich King weren't as hard as the heroics in Burning Crusade. Like, there were a few of them, like, the Azul and the Rube was actually pretty hard whenever it came out, but most of them were pretty fucking easy. And also, another reason why they were easy is that people just got better gear way faster.
Same content, and there's a bit of clashing between the two different playstyles there. We had heirlooms to speed up leveling as well. We had paid faction transfers towards the end of Wrath of the Lich King as well.
Mistake.
I wonder if that'll be in from the start of Wrath Classic.
That was a huge
The dungeons
mistake.
and heroic dungeons were just a lot easier, way up to the end of the Pit of Siren, Forge of Souls.
I think they should have never added faction transfers. They should, like, adding in faction transfers was probably the dumbest thing that Blizzard has ever put in the store besides the WoW token. Because, like, why? Because at that point, I think it took away a lot of character identity. Because, like, up until then, like, you playing on Horde or Alliance really kind of was meaningful. And then just taking that away, it's like, oh, you just pay money and then you swap to the other one. It made it mean a lot less. But that's, like, kind of an RP thing, so that's whatever. But the truth is, like, the reason why it was so bad is it made it to where serious guilds would transfer and they would play at that time. They would want to play with the best racials. And this became a really big problem in Cataclysm, because I remember it was like Heroic Cho'Gall had like this one mechanic where you would just like be able to AoE interrupt it, and if everybody was stacked up, and it was so fucking easy on Horde because you had like the Blood Elf Silence and the War Stomp for Tauren. And before that, people had to just figure it out. And yeah, that's why Blizzard added it. It was more money. Yeah, but like now what they're having is like Alliance is pretty much dead, which sucks.
Pause a reflection in the ICC patch. If you wanted hard PvE content though, the raids did end up making up for it big time. It was essentially a gear reset in each patch with a new set of badges being brought out, which any player could work towards very powerful gear from. And achievements were brought out, which in some way gave birth to the Link X achievement if you want to have done something. You know the story, how do you get into a raid? Oh, you need the achievement, but how do you get the achievement? You need to have done the raid. And also from that to some degree as well of the badges giving anybody really good access.
I don't think that was that big of a problem because like, what was it in Classic WoW? Like, how did you get invited into raids in Classic WoW? You rolled the healer, you bought gear, you had pre-best gear score. Yeah, I feel like it was kind of all the same stuff, right? I mean, you would just go to Stormwind and they would invite you and you would either join or not based off of if they thought you were good. A guild, yeah, you just show up. I don't think that you could sneak in easily because it's 40-man raid. But, like, is that good, though? That, like, the raids were so easy that people could just clear them, so you would just get invited even if you were bad, and you could just get carried through? Like, I don't think that's really good design. Like, I think that's, like, kind of, that's bad design, too. Like, even in Burning Crusade now, what I know that people do is they still gear check you. Like, so gear score and getting gear checked for me are pretty much the same fucking thing. Because most people don't understand what they're looking for, and they'll think that somebody who has like a shitty trinket is actually just having a shitty trinket, but it's actually very good for their class or something like that.
To really good gear came the gear score add-on, because as we all know, the more purples
I had 6.1k gear score
item that people are wearing, the better player they are. Were some of these
better
culprits
person
behind the slowing of the growth of
better
World of
person.
Warcraft, or were they the ones keeping it afloat? Over 10 million subs for, well, anything is kind of insane, and World of Warcraft was by no means on a downwards trend moving into Cataclysm, but it also just kind of stopped growing during that first patch. Wrath of the Lich King was very much the peak and the plateau. So what other negatives were there?
There's nothing for people to look forward to. That's why. There's nothing else really for people to do. 6.6k? Bro, you probably had Shadowmourne if you had 6.6k. I remember Shadowmourne added like 500 onto your score. And I would actually take extra items just so whenever I would whisper somebody for an invite, I would take like a heroic ICC item just so I could equip it to my character to get into the raid. It was so fucking stupid, man. Like, the gear score add-on was just so dumb. And, like, you do that now, right, with keeping things with high eye level. You even still do that now in WoW because, like, they've made eye level matter so much. That's one of the good things about Classic WoW, I think, and even Burning Crusade to a lesser extent, that you had so many items from, like, the previous raid tiers that were good throughout the expansion or throughout, like, multiple raid tiers. Like, I thought that was cool. Like Onslaught Girdle, things like that.
Well, it started to erode away the social aspects of the game more and more with the likes of the LFD for dungeons and heirlooms, which allow players to easily zoom through solo or group content without too much interaction between players. It was the first time that content started to become irrelevant during the same expansion. We didn't have any achievements anymore, and badge gear created an easy path to re-roll or revisit the game during each separate major content patch.
There was a real cock.
Quite the plague in the retail version of the game, where it almost feels seasonal to play during a patch instead of a continuous thing. Your class started to offer less on an individual basis.
No, that's absolutely what it was. The game did, over time, it became less and less. It became less and less of a expansion game, and it became more and more of a patch game. And this happened in Wrath of the Lich King for the first time. And the real fucking turning point was Trial of the Crusader. And I hope he talks about this. In Trial of the Crusader, that's whenever you were able to get better gear in 5-mans than you could get in Nax Ramas. So it just completely put Nax in the garbage. There was no reason to ever do Nax other than to get like maybe a couple of cool trinkets or just for the achievements or something like that. It was so fucking bad. Then after that, you had, you had like ICC come out, and then the 5-man dungeons from there invalidated all of Ulduar. So you didn't even need to do that. And then Cataclysm comes out. By the time Dragon Soul was out, you never needed to do the tier 11 dungeons. And then you guys know what happened to Mist of Pandaria and onwards from there. So this became a bigger issue over time.
Gone were the days, as we've seen in TBC, where you need X, Y, Z class to provide A, B, C buff and optimize your raid. Now, several different roles could provide like-for-like buffs or debuffs. You didn't just need a Shadow Priest and only ever a Shadow Priest for mana regen anymore. A Retribution could provide a similar buff, or a Frost Mage at a push. And for the entire raid, no less. On top of this, mana starts...
I think this was an improvement, personally. The Burning Crusade buffs are really cool, but I find them to be kind of restrictive in a way. And it's like... I would say like the best buff meta is like in between Burning Crusade and Wrath. Like a little bit more homogenized than Burning Crusade, but a little bit less homogenized than Wrath. Like somewhere in the middle there, that's where I thought things were the best.
To matter less and less for healers. And one final point which I just can't ignore is somebody at Blizzard really liked mounted combat. More than any player has ever liked it. It was absolutely everywhere in Wrath of the Lich King. Strand of the Ancients, Flame Leviathan, Eye of Eternity, the Oculus, questing. So why on earth was this expansion?
It was a cool idea, okay? Mounted combat was a really cool idea.
And so popular then if it was riddled with things which were problematic? What did Wrath of the Lich King do that made it so good? People, it turns out, like the story. People like Arthas. People like the Lich King a lot. Even those who didn't play Warcraft 3, he was the central antagonist of the expansion. And
everybody knew about the Lich King. My dad knows who the Lich King is.
It was impossible not to know who he was, and that he was now attacking the world, and we're going to have to be defending it from him. And us having a raid tier, Trial of the Crusader, which its sole purpose, lore-wise at least, was to prepare the heroes of Azeroth to assault ICC, was pretty epic. And then at the end of the expansion, we do actually definitively take out the big bad guy ourselves and see that the journey is complete. It was very satisfying end to the story. It became much easier than it ever has been to pick up a new class or specialization due to the gearing path and badge gear that we went over prior. This on top of the leveling journey being continually sped up through the likes of heirlooms. Most classes felt better despite sharing a lot of buffs and debuffs and more fleshed out. There weren't really any total meme specs anymore, which just kind of weren't good for anything, though some were definitely better.
Were there really no meme specs? I mean, Arms Warriors sucked in ICC, I remember that. But they were also really good in PvP, so it's like, were they really that bad? I don't know. Like Moonkin was not amazing, but it was still good. Overall, and Moonkin also gave a pretty unique buff, I think, too. So, like, there's still a reason to bring Moonkins, etc. But, like, yeah, I think ICC and, like, Wrath, just, like, in general, did improve classes a lot. And I think that classes in Wrath of the Lich King felt complete. Like, what I think that they did after Wrath of the Lich King is, like, from Vanilla WoW to Burning Crusade to Wrath, is they made classes more complete. And then I felt like after Wrath of the Lich King into, like, Cataclysm and Mists of Pandaria, the way that Blizzard iterated and they made classes more interesting is they gave them the abilities that other classes already had. So, like, you know, Warriors got Evasion with Die by the Sword. Warriors got, you know, Hand of Justice with the Throwdown, right? And you would start getting abilities that other classes had. And in Wrath of the Lich King, every class still had a lot of uniqueness to it. Yeah, mages got heroism. A bunch of other examples. Yeah, that's whenever things started getting homogenized, was in Cataclysm. And I think Cataclysm was still okay, but, like, by Mists of Pandaria, you just had so... Remember, like, Warriors had, like, 3 different banners they could throw down? You needed to use, like, in Rage Regeneration, you could use Shield Wall, Spell Reflect, Shield Block, like, Rallying Cry. Like, it was just, like, all of this, like, it was like... It's the fucking Jackie Chan meme, right? It's like, what the fuck is going on? Oh my god, it was crazy.
Than others, and there was more reason to class stack now than there was in TBC, but you had a much wider berth of what you actually wanted to play. Those who like their collections and other meta content were given tabs to collect stuff in, achievements to do,
that's
and
the real
more
game.
Compelling reasons to engage with activity that wasn't just solely raid or PvP. Raids in Wrath got off to a shaky start, but Wrath of the Lich King gave us Ulduar and ICC, and the start of real hardcore raiding in World of Warcraft, which offered newer or returning players something to aspire towards as well. And of course, it just had the highest player base, which is generally good for an MMORPG.
Everybody was so excited.
People, active world, good arena population, lots of raids and pug content, and just, well, other people. If you think back to one of your favorite times in World of Warcraft, part of it was probably who you were playing with at the time, not just because of the expansion. People make MMOs good, and Wrath of the Lich King had a lot of people. Honestly, the reception...
Dude, it was so good. Like, you guys remember, if you played back then, do you remember whenever Blizzard would put out the annual, like, quarterly earnings report? And, like, they would say, like, oh, WoW is up to fucking, you know, 3,000, or not 3,000, like, you know, 8 million, 9 million, fucking 10 million subs, you know, oh, we're up again. And, like, everybody in trade chat, so y'all forget this, but, like, everybody in trade chat used to talk about, like, WoW was, like, what was popular. It's not like now where it's like WoW is played by, like, dads and a few soccer moms. Like, it was super popular because those dads and soccer moms were in high school back then. And so they were so hyped up. It was like that was the new and happening thing. It was so cool. I remember, like, Nixian brought that up in a video one time, and I couldn't stop thinking about it.
TBC so far has put a bit of a dampener on the whole thing, to be honest, with people looking away from WoW to other MMOs at the moment. I think that initial sparkle of the big three has really started to erode a little bit with us moving from Classic into TBC. And though Blizzard may do fresh, it's not going to be anything remotely similar. And Blizzard hasn't exactly helped the scenario either, what with the 58 boost, the microtransactions, and all the scandals which they seem to just constantly pile on themselves. Remember those comments a few months back saying Classic WoW? No, that's just the TBC waiting room. I wonder how early we're going to see that TBC is the Wrath of the Lich King waiting room starting to crop up. Overall, for
I think that a lot of people will think that for PvP. There are a lot of PvPers who will genuinely enjoy Wrath of the Lich King more than Burning Crusade for PvP, and I think they're right to feel that way. I think Wrath of the Lich King PvP was just objectively better than Burning Crusade PvP. I think Burning Crusade PvP was garbage. To be honest with you, I really do. I think that it had all of the same like problems that Classic WoW did, but there was a rating system attached to it as well. It was just like they had like these the random stuns, like just random like resists, and just like RNG gameplay that was like super not fun. Like in Wrath of the Lich King, I think PvP was probably, at least for its time, at its absolute peak in like Season 7 and Season 8. Because at that time, like almost every class was good in some way or another, and any class could one-shot any class if you had the right buffs, and you could outplay almost anyone. Wrath of the Lich King PvP was fucking insane, but Wrath of the Lich King PvE, I think, was like objectively inferior to Burning Crusade. I think Burning Crusade rating was way better just because of the way that it was set up and designed.
A solid expansion as somebody who played it. I don't think I'm going to get nearly the same experience out of it the second time around, though. And by that time, other competitors on the market should have some interesting releases out too. A bit of a shake-up in the MMO genre. So rather than constantly revisiting the past, we have something to look forwards to. Something unknown in the future. If you started World of Warcraft a bit later than Wrath, you'll probably like it if you do end up giving it a go. It combines some of that retail-esque convenience with the class design and raids of old. I can see now why it was looked back upon so well, but at the same time it kind of gives me a don't meet your hero vibes. Free win for Blizzard though, right? Surely.
Wrath of the Lich King was good for its time, but it set the stage for every bad problem the game has now.
Anyways, let me know your thoughts, whether you played Wrath or not, and what you thought about the positives and negatives I brought up here. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching and listening in, and I will see you on the next one very soon.
That was TBC. I think TBC set the stage. Cataclysm did. Nope. Definitely not Cataclysm. Sorry from late Cataclysm. No, Cataclysm just made it worse, okay?